Well, it's been almost exactly 2 years, and finally, the pandemic is dissipating. We made our choices, we learned our lessons, and it's a new dawn. And it's a new season for the year 2022, and a new time for all of us to embrace new life, new opportunities, new abundance. And while we balance our care and genuine prayer for peace and the awareness of a world that still includes unthinkable tragedy and sorrow and even war, we also are grateful for how blessed we are. And so let us use this spring of 2022 to take everything that we've learned, clear the past, and move forward in gratitude for the freedom that we have, for the blessings of our lives, for the opportunity to come together again in community, online, and yes, in person. We are all part of the awakening world, and we all have the roles that we're playing as individuals and collectively. We are the imaginal cells finding each other to create a beautiful, incredible butterfly out of the old paradigm. So welcome to spring of 2022. Welcome to the awakening world.
We come from the same source, a powerful love force. We're coming together, stronger than ever, not divided. We come from the same source, a powerful love force. We're coming together, hear the call, you are invited. We come from the same source, a powerful love force.
Good morning, everybody. I am Love Coach Scott Catamas, and it is a beautiful, sacred Sunday morning. I want to welcome everybody who's coming in different ways. I want to welcome those of you in our Zoom room, and please, I see a lot of our friends, a lot of our regulars, and also some new names. Let us know where you are geographically. And today's big question is, what does sacred sexuality mean to you? And so whether you're in our Zoom room, whether you're watching on Facebook, on Unify, we want to know, what does that mean to you? I also really want to welcome everybody watching the replay, because we see that about half the people who end up watching this show watch the replay, and you're all welcome as well. If you are watching on YouTube channel or Facebook, come on into our Zoom room. It's easier for us to interact with you that way. We've got some wonderful presenters. And on Sunday mornings, we especially really enjoy interacting with our audience. And it's easy. Just go to globalpeacetribe.com, and register. And we'll look forward to connecting with you directly that way. I will do my best to look down and see what's happening on Facebook and bring some of those questions and comments into the chat box or into our conversation. But it's easiest if you come on into the Zoom room. And speaking of in the Zoom room, I see Phyllis from the Big Island and Christine from British Columbia, Stephen from Alberta. He's one of our guests. And one is Mary, always appreciate that you're here, from Santa Rosa. Lynn and Leaf, and a lot of our regulars, so welcome. All right, so as I mentioned, this morning, it's all about sacred sexuality as a spiritual path. I took my very first Tantra class in the mid-'80s, and it was kind of cool because it was being taught by Margot Anand, and it was Margot's very first time teaching in the United States. And it was my very first Tantra class. And she and I became very good friends. My wife and she were best friends. Margot, of course, went on literally to write probably the most popular book on Tantra. I later ended up making a feature film about Tantra. And it's been a big part of my life. I've been teaching it, practicing it since 1985. But I'm not going to talk that much about myself today because we've got three wonderful people. First off is Stephen Roland. And of course, this weekend we've been highlighting coaches and the platform that Stephen has created called RelationFlix. And Stephen's a longtime friend of mine, and he has spent 3 years building this platform. And we're going to learn all about it today. Those of you who've been with us Friday and Saturday night, you've seen a bit. You've met some of the coaches, and you're going to meet another wonderful coach from RelationFlix, and that's Ariel Brown. And I've been a fan of Ariel's for a long time. We've both taught together at some of the common festivals, and I've always enjoyed her classes. And she was on Saturday Night Live. I think about a year ago, Ariel, is when you were on with us. And so it's great to have you as part of the RelationFlix platform and team. And then I've also brought back, even though she was on recently twice, I so love the energy of Sean Renato. And she has brought to our world the wisdom of sensual intelligence. You know, there's IQ, mental intelligence, and then there's EQ, which is emotional intelligence. And Sean Ray has brought to our world her SQ, I guess. Can we call it SQ?
Hmm.
Yeah. Sensual intelligence. So we're going to be hearing a lot from all three of these brilliant individuals. So come on, let us know, what does sacred sexuality mean to you? What does Tantra mean to you? And how can we use our sexuality as a spiritual path? So we want to hear from you, and of course, we're going to hear from our guests. It is a Sacred Sunday show, and for anybody watching for the first time, we are multi-denominational. We don't promote any one particular religion or path. We recognize that there's an infinite number of ways to connect to the divine. But what we do encourage is that we can make anything sacred just by seeing the divinity within that person or that experience. And so I'm going to just invite us to drop in and slow down and maybe close our eyes, unless you're operating a motor vehicle. Let's just take some breaths together. And as we breathe, bringing our attention into ourself, just let my words gently guide you. But as you're breathing in and out at your own pace, please tune into your own body temple. And what's going on inside of your body temple right now? How well resourced are you? Did you get enough rest last night? How's your tummy? Are you hungry, or did you eat too much? How well hydrated are you? What's your emotional state? Tired, relaxed, excited? Many of us live in a constant state of low-grade anxiety or even hypervigilance. There is no right or wrong answer to any of these questions. There only is what is. So whatever is happening inside of your body, let's honor it. For today, it's all about honoring our bodies, these beautiful body temples that we get to inhabit for a period of time. And we're going to learn some tips and tools and practices of how to celebrate and honor these bodies and to enjoy them even more fully. Let's conclude this little meditation by inviting you to remember a time in your life, and it could be recent or it could be in the past, when you learned something. Somebody said something, a teacher said something, or you read something in a book or in the paper or online, or you saw a meme, and you went, ah. And you took that wisdom, that knowledge, that nugget, and applied it to your life. I invite all of you to remember a time when you've done that. And let's do that again today. As we open our eyes and we look at these wonderful coaches and teachers that you're going to have guiding you today, sharing their wisdom, let's all gather some nuggets from these beautiful, beautiful souls. And let's all learn and grow together, because that's how we are awakening. So I'm going to start actually by asking the question. I'll go to Ariel first. What does sacred sexuality mean to you? And how has that been a spiritual path for you?
So to me, sacred sexuality means really coming back into the subtle energetics of the body. To me, sacred sexuality means shifting out of associating sexuality just with our genitals, where most of us associate our sexuality with, and instead relating sacred sexuality with our sexuality, our sexual energy being a life force that is moving through our entire system at any moment and is both flowing out to the divine and also flowing in from the divine. And perhaps if we're engaging in sacred sexuality with another person, it's the awareness of that there is divine life force energy moving through our body, acknowledging that our sexuality is who we are. It's every facet of who we are. And engaging in that awareness that my sexuality connects me to the divine and allows me to more embody the truth of that divinity as I'm connecting with another person. And what that's invited me into in my own sexuality is a desire to really slow down, to look at where I have learned to rush to penetration, to rush to the pursuit of climax, because I've been taught that that's what sexuality is, or to have any sort of agenda about what a sexual experience needs to look like, and just wiping that slate clean to see what emerges when I'm just present with myself. I'm present with the person across from me, if there is another person involved, and that I don't actually know what's meant to happen. Really, that the most beautiful thing that I can do is stay connected to my heart and my body and my divinity, and to the best of my ability, stay connected to that person and their heart and their body, and that they are an expression of the divine. And to see what wants to emerge from that place when both of us are devoted to that remembering and that embodiment and that presence, and reverence in every moment.
I love what you're saying. And isn't it a delight when you gather with somebody, or a group of people even, and you drop in to a meditative or a present space, and everybody asks the same question: what wants to happen here? How does life want to experience itself through our combination, or this unique combination? Even on this show right now, like, this is the only time in human history that this particular group of people will be watching and connecting. So what wants to happen here? And you've gotten us off to a beautiful start, Ariel. I have so many questions I want to ask you, but I want to bring Sean-Ree and Stephen on first, but we'll be back with you.
Beautiful.
Sean-Ree, what does sacred sexuality mean to you?
May I share something that I wrote in my book about it?
That would be great.
Yeah. Okay. So this is it. I orgasm to every breath, to time and space, to life and death, to decay and birth, to horror and beauty, and to the perfection of everything as it is. It was love making and the creation of oneness, the ultimate union. My body expressed the pure divinity and sacredness of all of it. And ecstasy crested again and again and again and again through my being, the being of all of the world, all perfect and seamlessly, intricately woven into one. And that is what sacred sexuality is. It is like all of our bodies, all of our energies are deeply interwoven. And when our bodies connect with that and just feel that deep connection with everything, when we feel that oneness, that pure ecstatic bliss is what's sacred, and that also is what we are.
Oh, I love that. That's so beautiful. So, since you brought it up, and we'll bring it up a couple times, that is her book. It's Sensual Intelligence, The Lost IQ. You can get it on Amazon. Just go to Amazon, put in Sensual Intelligence, and it pops right in. And I hope that you'll share more with us, maybe whether it's readings from the books or just sharing your own experience. It's so good to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Stephen, it's challenging after these two exquisite women. I, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a little insecure almost. It's like, wow. What's the, and I know that I met you at a Tantra festival. That's where we first met. But please share with our audience, what does this mean to you, this topic?
Yeah, it's something that's been screamingly alive for me for well over a decade now, and I'm happy to be here because I'm super passionate about it. To me, the core foundation of a sacred sexuality practice is the acknowledgement that the entire universe is inherently sexual in its nature. All of life happens. It bursts and blossoms and transforms and expresses with color because of sexuality at all levels of existence. Now I'm going to qualify that by saying what my definition of sexuality is. And that is an energy exchange between two or more positions. There's an energy interaction that creates more life, more beauty, more expansion, and more transformation. So that's my definition of sexuality. So when there's an exchange and a sort of energetic transaction, if we look at how the entire universe operates as a mechanism, we see that at all levels. Like some of the obvious examples are how the sun just completely blasts our planet with warmth and light. Like that's inherently sexual. It brings forward life and beauty and magic and transformation on the planet, and perhaps deeper levels that we don't even know yet. Even something as mundane as a debit card transaction. You stick your debit or credit card into the slot, and there's like a penetrative quality to that, and there's an energy exchange that happens there, and then boom, something new after that moment occurs. Like life has changed as we know it in some way. Like even at the atomic level, there's an exchange between protons and electrons that are happening. There's a giving of energy and a receiving energy. The proton gives, the electron receives, and that exchange, that energy exchange, is called electromagnetism. And electromagnetism is the force that holds matter together. So quite literally, like this very sexual exchange, this giving and receiving energy that brings forth beauty and creation and transformation and magic, happens at the atomic level. We can look for examples of this at the most smallest and the biggest parts of the entire universe. So, you know, like considering this, it brings forth the question of like, why is there so much shame and kind of withdraw and withhold and closure and contraction and fear around our sexuality, when it's actually something that's just so completely fundamental to our entire existence? Like when we look at it in that frame, it's almost like preposterous that we have these closures and contractions, and yet here they are. So for me, sacred sexuality practice is completely about, you know, and I'm going to kind of tag team with Ariel here and what she said, piggyback a bit, and that's and even something that you said, Scott, is it's about like, to what degree can I get of my own way so that this beautiful expressive life force can move through me into life, into the world, or into another person in a way where like I'm completely stepping aside and getting out of the way for the love of God to move through my body. And so, yeah, that's the practice. And it kind of starts with acknowledging that it's inherently sacred, looking at our blockages and saboteurs to being in the expression of that, and seeing how we can kind of chisel away those parts of ourselves so we can let the love of God come through.
Stephen, you're amazing. I have been, as I said, around the Tantra sacred sexuality world for a long time. But I think you are absolutely the first and only person in history to connect sacred sexuality to an ATM machine and electromagnetic particles and the universe all within one thought. I love that. Good job, brother. Good job. All right, our comments are beginning to come in from our friends. I am going to read a couple comments, and then I've got another question for all of our panelists here. I'm going to bring them back on so you can look at them for a minute. Nancy writes, "Thank you for reminding me that the sun is divinely sexy as the universe, sacred energy, yes." And then Dorina, who I know is coming all the way from South America, I think Ecuador. Welcome, Dorina. Also, I noticed in Unify, we've got people coming from Holland, Canada. So we really do welcome the international flavor of our audience. Dorina writes, "Thank you for reclaiming the deeper meaning of sacred sexuality and divine feminine and masculine. For their overuse, especially in the New Age community, has somewhat diminished their powerful energy and transformational effect on our bodies, minds, hearts, and souls. And what can be more impactful in our journeys and our relationships?" So beautiful, Dorina, beautiful. You know, Tantra literally means to weave. And we've kind of heard some of that, you know, in what we've already heard today, but just a reminder that in sacred sexuality, we are weaving our masculine and our feminine within ourselves, or we're weaving with each other, or we're weaving with life. And so my next question for each of you is, what's a practice for when you're alone? How do you weave, or if you wish, merge or dance or experience your own sexuality with divinity, with spirit, with whatever you wish to call it? And I'll go in the same order again. So Ariel, I'm going to put the spotlight on you.
Aloha. Yeah, thank you for asking. Well, I'll share a significant practice that was very meaningful to me in my own healing journey around my sexuality, and really embodiment, coming back into my body and really looking at where throughout my journey in sexuality, where for a lot of my younger years, I wasn't in my body for my sex, and I was actually popping out a lot during sex. And this is a lot of what when I'm working with women and there's difficulties around opening in sexuality, it's the wound around it not having been safe in our sexual experiences in the past, or being penetrated before our body was fully ready. Over enough period of time, eventually we kind of learn to not fully be present when we're in the act of being penetrated by another, especially as, well, in my case, as a woman. So a practice that I have really enjoyed, it's a combination of linking back the sexual organs with the heart. To me, that's a big place where there's become disconnection. So, for example, when I'm working with a yoni wand, a crystal or glass wand, a practice that I use to really make sure that my body is fully ready to receive something inside of me while staying connected to the heart is I'll work with a yoni wand and hold it right up to the entrance of my yoni and just hold it there and be in relationship with it. And rather than just immediately going to inserting this wand inside of me, really holding it up towards where my body opens and being in relationship with that phallic object, being in relationship with it and moving my body in a spiral energy that's really showing I'm not just passively going to receive something inside of me. I'm actually forming a relationship with, I'm forming a connection with the thing that will eventually enter inside of me, and actually intentionally moving that energy up through my body. And to me, it's a very somatic, I work in spirals, and actually forming that energetic relationship with that thing that exists outside of me and moving it up my body, down my body, so my full body becomes in relationship with the knowing that there's this invitation to receive something inside of me. And my practice is that, one, when I engage in this practice, there's not actually a guarantee that I will receive anything inside of me. My body could just be in a place where I don't actually want to be penetrated today. And it was really just about the movement of that energy and showing my body that it's your choice. You are the final gateway around anything entering inside of your womb. And it also might be that my body is a full yes to receiving, this yoni wand inside of me, and the practice being that my full body needs to be a yes. I need to be fully alive. I need to be fully engorged. My body actually more needs to be like pulling the wand inside of me versus anything feeling like force. And that's been a super powerful practice for me. And it's also been just a super powerful practice to give any woman who's wanting to feel more at choice around the penetrative process, in a really potent way of restoring what I call restoring integrity with the body, so that the body on a deep soul level knows that we're not going to abandon it or force it in the pursuit of gratification or being chosen or any of the stories that can get looped into sex. So yeah, thank you for receiving.
So much wisdom, and just I love how you keep reminding us slowing down and being present with what is and not pushing, forcing, or expecting anything. That is so different than, especially how most men are programmed when it comes to sexuality. And so thank you. Beautiful wisdom. Sean Marie, I'm going to pop the spotlight on you, eager to hear what you have to say.
Oh, I love that so much. I just love, it's like being with that and being with the breath. And similarly, for me, a sacred sexuality practice, how that comes alive. Excuse me. First, I want to say, for me, a lot of what comes up and a lot of what I work with is how, just actually really feeling and being in a real and sacred connection with my energies, with my feminine and my masculine. There is a way that that we can actually push away from from both of those energies, like push away, just push away from our feminine receptivity, push away from our masculine, like, get things and, and eat it up. And so then we end up like just kind of in like this numb, stuck, protective place. And so one of the most beautiful practices that I do and that I lead people through, because for me it's this constant dance, and weaving of the masculine, of the feminine, of the push and the pull, of the in, of the out, of the expansion and the drawing in, is for me connecting to the breath, connecting to the heart, connecting to like being held by the earth. And in that practice, like being able to, connecting to heart is feeling myself first, connecting to actually being held in my back, held in my bottom, held in wherever I'm being held. So that in this embodiment, I feel both supported, like the surrender of the feminine, but then also feeling I surrender into the feminine, allow my body to do that, holding on, connected to my heart, connecting to my womb. And then as I breathe, allowing the breath to go through, allowing the body to move with the breath, whether it is an undulation, whether it is a spiral, whether it is a stretching. As I surrender more and more, I open to the trust of then my masculine coming in. And my masculine can only come in because I have surrendered. And then I get to feel my own inner masculine, like hold me, take me, feel me, be with me. And I am, it's beautiful because I am surrendered, yet I'm also feeling my masculine, like coming out and, just like taking control. And then also I'm being held by the earth and my breath and my heart. And all of that is continued and deepened and felt in this breathing. I breathe. Oh yeah, remember, surrender. Oh yes, surrender. Feel your womb. Okay, I'm feeling my womb. In that, then the masculine comes in and I allow him to have his way with me. And it's this whole like intertwining dance. And why that's so important is because like I know that our this energy is it just like with Stephen said, it comes out and it supports us in all the different ways. And so if I'm not connected with my masculine, how am I going to have the energy to like make the decisions that I need to make and like actually like feel that from an embodied place? If I'm not connected to my feminine, how am I going to like receive the gifts that I need to, that are there for me because I'm not, because I'm not in that embodied place. And that we are all of that all the time.
I'm getting out my magic wand because I have a fantasy. And my fantasy is that you would teach sexuality in junior high school. If every teenager that as they're coming of age could hear what you just shared, right? If that could be the introduction to a teenager's experience of sexuality, how healthy our world would be. That is beautiful, absolutely beautiful and poetic and great truth, because ideally the masculine learns to make it safe for the feminine to receive. That is our job. And we're not taught that as teenagers. We're not taught that as boys, and so God bless you. Thank you. That was brilliant. Just brilliant. I'm so grateful that Steve Roland is here because I don't know who else could follow that.
Yeah, so a practice at home to engage in sacred sexuality. For me, I'm reminded of the Rumi quote. It's not our task to seek love, but to find and dismantle all the barriers that we've built up against it. And like for me, that's really it. It's like at our core, it's like this gorgeous divine architect and magician has designed these beautiful masterpieces that are the human body in a variety of different ways. And like, so inherently, like we're made of divine magic. It's who we are. And so like I get like what I said earlier was like it's really about looking at like what are the resistances to that, like what withholds us and blocks us from doing that. And a practice kind of in that realm that I really enjoy is just simply feeling the body and what's going on there. I'll use some yogic and tantric language, and that's the paying attention to how our energy, our prana shakti, our life force energy is moving through our body, and specifically through the nadi channels. Like our energy channels in our body behave similar to how a garden hose behaves. You know, if it's smooth and free flowing, it just smooths nice and easily. Everything flows nice and easily. But if there's a kink somewhere, boom, there's a buildup and a block, and that creates tension. And the more pressure that builds up, the more amplified that tension can get. And so really that's the practice for me, is like just constantly paying attention to where's there tension in the body. And just like right, and that even right where the rubber meets the road is like, how's your belly feel right now? You know, most of us are conditioned, I don't want to say most of us, but many of us are conditioned to believe that these concave stomachs are superior, and subconsciously are just sucking in and creating tension in that part of our body. And it's like right near the base where our energy flows upward up the spine from. So, you know, just like how energetically harmful that is, that we're constantly sucking in. Like, do that practice with me right now. Just suck in your belly and just feel what that feels like. And like I'm doing it right now, and it's like I'm having to exert extra energy to even talk to you right now because of it. But if we can just relax our bellies and have that be a norm, like energy will start flowing through our body more freely. So really it's just about doing the detective work. Like, where do I feel tense? Like, where is there anxiety? Where are there some uncomfortable sensations? And can I use the 3 tantric tools of breath, movement, and sound to take those kinks and encourage them to open? So yeah, breath, movement, and sound, you know, body shaking, deep breaths with like a low guttural sound on the exhale to really push the energy through our system. You know, those are all really great practices to unkink the kinks.
You know, thank you so much for reminding us about that, and bringing all of our people back on for a sec. One of the things that as a man is really important is to be able to be vocal. You know, that the more we open up, as he said, our sound, our vocal, this area is connected to our genitals. And so the more that we can open up our sound, the more that we as men can experience. Not just in our genitals, but through our whole body. But most men are very contracted. We've been taught not to make sounds, and certainly not to make sounds during sex. And so there's this kind of constriction thing that cuts off our pleasure and our flow. So learning to breathe, open up, you know, as my friend Margaret would call it, she always called it the magic flute in her French accent, you know, but to really imagine that it's like a flute so that we can play the different parts of the body. Yeah. Beautiful. Okay, now part of our title was Sacred Sexuality as a Spiritual Practice. And of course, we've already touched on that, but I'm going to take it a step deeper. I want to acknowledge that almost everyone that I coach went through a disillusionment with whatever religion or faith they were first raised in. It's pretty common. And usually it's because we mature and we realize that some of the dogma isn't true for us, or maybe the human beings that were involved with the religion weren't practicing what they were preaching. And so there's this disillusionment process that happens. And then if we're lucky, we find our own unique connection, maybe back to Jesus or back to Buddha or back to the religion, or maybe a completely different connection that we discover. What's tragic is people that haven't rediscovered that connection. You know, they threw the baby out with the bathwater, and throwing out the religion and the dogma, they also threw out the belief or the option to have connection. So all of that is a way of asking each of you maybe to share a personal how you had an awakening to your own personal connection to spirit or to divinity or to God or to whatever you like to call it. And especially if that was through sacred sexuality. So it doesn't have to be, but if it was, that kind of fits into, what we're talking about today. So same order. I'll go to you first, Ariel.
Well, when I reflect on what really so I'm Jewish, and I grew up probably the least religious in my private Jewish elementary school. My parents wanted me to go to a private Jewish elementary school because we were living in a neighborhood that didn't have a great school and actually didn't like Jewish people very much. And I remember I got to this point maybe in second or third grade where I only talked to God when I needed something trivial. Like I would remember when I couldn't find the remote control, I'd say, please, God, show me where the remote control is. And I remember like, okay, there's something a little off here, that this is the only time that I'm really speaking to God. And, in high school, I was always interested in psychology and understanding the human condition. And when I reflect on what really connected me back to spirituality, it really began when I moved out to California. And a sister of mine, I was living in Fairfax, California at the time, and I wasn't that into hiking. I just looked at hiking as exercise outdoors, which didn't sound very fun to me. And I remember a sister of mine at the time really introduced me into nature as magic, that nature is actually a pathway towards connecting with the divine. And it really started to open me to, again, rather than looking at plant life as these separate things from me, similar to the way that I spoke about sexuality and sexual energy, I started connecting to nature and the world around me and the energy of nature around me. And there was a peak moment where I decided, my first LSD experience, I decided to do a double dose and go on a little adventure in the back roads of Fairfax, California. And the experience that I had of what nature becomes in that state, the way that nature becomes alive, and the direct connection that I experienced to Mother Nature as she revealed herself to me, and the realizing, I'm an ambassador of Mother Nature. I am here in service to Mother Nature, and I can be in relationship with her if I am willing to attune my senses to her. And it's funny, Stephen, because you seeded this story for me when you were talking about the sucking in of the belly. Because I remember the next morning I woke up and I was like, I'm going to walk to the good earth. And I remember, walking to the good earth, and I noticed my belly was just fully out. I wasn't sucking her in. She was just like fully like open. And I felt so deeply embodied. There was nothing in me that was trying to make myself smaller or contract. Like this idea of the relationship between connection to the divine and to what degree we are walking around in life in a state of contraction or a state of openness and expansiveness. And I remember feeling this openness and this expansiveness and this embodiedness in my belly. And I remember thinking to myself, I want to figure out how to live here all the time without the need for medicine. And what I'll leave it with is that I have found that intimacy the subtle energetics of intimacy is very much an altered state of consciousness, where if we're truly tapping into these subtle energies, we're always connected to God.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was really, and incidentally for me, my great awakening was the first time I took LSD. It wasn't in Fairfax, but I know Fairfax, and that's a nice place to do it. But yeah, definitely, I think a lot of us woke up or had a big wake up with mushrooms or psychedelics, healthy psychedelics. Sean Rhee, eager to hear what you have to, your inevitably poetic sharing.
Yeah, how did I connect or reconnect to spirit?
Yeah.
So I grew up in a religious household, it's Christianity, and I'm in the South, in Arkansas. So I had all the things.
Wow.
There's not touch. Anything about sex was a sin. That's what I grew up with. And I was a very curious person. I was very curious about sex, the body, touching, and I found what's really funny is like I found my family's porn. I found my dad's porn. So I'm sitting here watching it and being like super fascinated and also confused and thinking. And I always thought that I was going to hell. I was like, I'm going to hell because I am watching these things. I mean, I just knew I was. And I remember like one time it was on VHS tapes. I remember I watched it and then I just felt so engulfed with shame and terror and like I'm going to hell that I got a baseball bat and smashed it because I was just like I needed to keep myself away from temptation. And so that was like how I experienced my body. That was how I experienced like how I experienced my body, let alone sensuality or sexuality. And then one day when I was 17, I was in this program and this man, his name was Mr. Lovelace or something like that, I don't remember. And he said something that completely changed my life. He said that God is in everything. And like I had full body, like even when I say it now, full body shivers. Because it suddenly, I mean, and because there's in me, I always felt like there was something off. I mean, I was like, how can God punish all these people? What if they don't know God? Why is it their fault for not getting the information? Why is there even hell? If God is love, then why are people even being punished and going to hell? And so and so for me internally, I always felt this confusion and also saw how people acted. And so when I heard this, that God is in everything changed, and I was able to feel God in everything, able to open up to that possibility. And I think that that's also why, when I speak about sacred sexuality and when I experience it, like I shared in the book, I experience God. I experience the perfection of everything because God is in everything. My body experiences that. My soul experiences that. When I'm with nature, I experience that. It was like when he said that, it was permission for me to actually dive into what I already knew. I already knew it, but I was being taught to separate from it. And so that's my could you reconnect to spirituality and God.
Wow. First of all, I just want to, I did not know your history. And what an incredible life journey. From Arkansas, thinking you're going to go to hell because you watched your dad's video porn, to being such a beautiful leader in helping us to really connect and really understand. And I love that your awakening was when you heard the deep truth that God is in everything and everything is in God. That is so beautiful. You know what? I feel inspired. We're going to get to Stephen in a moment, but I feel inspired to share with you something, Shanri. You can take this and use it. And of course, for everybody watching. We've had Deepak Chopra on our shows, and Deepak has a really fascinating thing that he points out. So, about the most ancient spiritual knowledge that we have, that texts that have survived that aren't stuck in a basement in the Vatican somewhere, are the ancient Vedic scriptures written in Sanskrit about 7,000 years ago. And in those Vedic scriptures, God is called Brahman. And in the Vedic scriptures, Brahman is assigned 26 principles. There are 26 principles of Brahman, 7,000 years ago. Fast forward to today, and our most modern science, of course, is quantum physics. And quantum physics is scientifically proven, what that teacher taught you, that everything is part of the unified field, that we are all living in a unified field of ever-changing molecules. And our scientists have so far scientifically come up with 26 principles of the unified field. And the 26 principles of the unified field perfectly correlate with the 26 definitions or principles of Brahman written 7,000 years ago, meaning we are living in a time when our most ancient spirituality and our most modern science are saying the same thing, and it's what Mr. Lovelace said to you and that you just described. And it's just different ways of understanding this deep truth that everything is in God and God is in everything. So, very cool. I like how excited you got when I got to share that. All right, we're going to go to Stephen.
Yeah, I grew up in an agnostic household. My parents didn't really engage with spirituality. It was kind of always this thing that was kept on the outside, not really engaged with. And I grew up into my teens and early adulthood, just like having this like growing level of resentment towards dogmatic religion and practices, and to a point where I would have described myself as an atheist. And when I was about 21 to 23, like so many people, and their entrance into spirituality and being attuned to something bigger, more magical that's operating in this world, I started to experience synchronicities and number patterns and seeing number sequences everywhere. And that's what kind of woke me up to something, yeah, just something ineffable that moves through life that we just can't explain. There's like this inherent intelligence to the way that life moves. And so just kind of like getting acclimated to that was kind of like where my big opening started to really take fold. And so, fast forward some 15 years later, and now I'm in my late 30s. I kind of have this like blessing and a curse of being a Gemini, and that's like the twin dynamic where we can kind of see both perspectives a little bit. And now I kind of have this life practice of not really throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. So what that means for me in this context is like, I still have a complete lack of taste for dogmatic oppression. And I think that's where like this growing movement of resistance over the last 5-6 decades is really birthed from is the oppressive qualities of spirituality that have been there. And I think like at an intuitive level, many of us understand that spirituality is actually a pathway to more freedom and liberation. And so if there's something that imposes less freedom and liberation onto us, it's inherently not a spiritual practice. I think at an intuitive level, a lot of us get that. And however, I was at this non-denominational spiritual church on the Big Island several years ago on a Sunday, and this one guy says, "I look at sin as self-indulgent nonsense." And like a light bulb went off for me, and it's like, there's certain parts of all religions that have like such massive value, and I think if we like have an objective look at all of them, a lot of them are actually talking about the same thing, just with different language, with a different figurehead. And yeah, I really enjoyed that frame of self-indulgent nonsense, and to kind of get into the weeds with that, it's like, but I'm going to qualify what I'm saying with another experience that I had, who's someone who identifies as Catholic, like proudly Catholic. And they told me about a story once where they were contemplating the nature of sin. And a friend of theirs calls her up and like, "Oh, hey, how you doing? What are you up to right now?" And she responds, "Contemplating the nature of sin." And the friend responds, "Wow, that's so depressing." And this person replies, "Actually, it's really not. It's really quite liberating, because I look at sin as the way that we show up in harmful ways that move us further away from our spirituality and further away from God." And so actually looking at where do we sin, and pardon the use of that language if it's a turnoff for some of you, as I'm imagining it might be, but I think that's super meaningful. It's like, where do we go into self-indulgent nonsense and go into like addictive, self-destructive behaviors that sabotage our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual wellness, and actually further restrict us from our capacity to be in complete unity and rapport and attunement with the Great Spirit. So I think that's worthwhile. So yeah, that's where I'll land, is like, I think there's treasure in all of it. And it's what a gorgeous opportunity we have in our modern times to be more empowered than ever to be able to discern what's a fit for us and what's not. Passing the talking stick.
Well, on the topic of sin, something that I always like to think about is that sin is originally an archery term that means to miss the mark. So when we sin, it's not that we're bad or evil or any of that nonsense, but we missed the mark of our own values, right? When we have hurt somebody, we missed the mark, because our true value, our true nature, is to be kind and to contribute to the well-being of others. So I like that way of thinking of sin as well. But self-indulgent nonsense definitely is a good one.
Actually, I'm going to tack in one more thing if I can.
Please.
One thing that I really loved that I heard from one of my spiritual teachers is that like the difference between the narrative of dogmatic Christianity and a spiritual tradition like Hinduism, where there's a narrative in dogmatic Christianity that's some flavor of you're a sinner. Everyone is inherently a sinner. And that's internalized to mean that everyone is bad and does bad things. And the common narrative in Hinduism, actually the first line of the very first scripture says that we're all God, period, full stop. And so there's just such this tremendous difference and contrast between like, we're all sinners and we're all bad versus we're actually all divine and holy. So I just think that's an interesting thing to look at.
Absolutely. Stephen, while I've got you on, we are going to talk about RelationFlix. So I want to invite everybody now to, whether you're watching at home, watching on Zoom, or watching the replay, to go to RelationFlix.com. RelationFlix.com. And this is Stephen's baby that he has spent 3 years building, where he has brought on amazing coaches. And he's offering a 14-day free trial. So for most of you, you're going to click 14-day free trial, but I'm going to go ahead and sign in because I want to show you what he has created, because it is amazing. There are coaches like you've seen, Ariel, oh come on, this should be in, there we go. Ariel Brown, and myself. I've done entire courses that Stephen has filmed. Sheza, who you've seen on our shows before. Arika, who was on last night and is wonderful. There's Ariel right there. And look at all these videos that he has. There's Trish. Of course, you've all seen Trish. She's my teaching partner every Friday night. Mike Brown is brilliant. There's Stephen. He's a great coach. Paul Sterling, he was on our show last night. He's my roommate. Dolphin, his partner. all of these different topics on intimacy, sexuality, dating, romance, communication, conflict resolution, attachment theory and psychology, personal development. It goes on and on. All of this is available free of charge for 14 days. And then after that, it is ridiculously inexpensive. So I want to encourage everyone to go to relationflix.com now, like as I'm talking, and get your 14-day free trial and start looking at all these amazing videos. They're going to help you with your relationships. Whatever question you might have, you're probably going to be able to find the answer from one of these amazing teachers. And so that's my initial thoughts. And Stephen, of course, I want to open it up to you, or also Ariel, because Ariel, you're an important part of RelationFlix. So anything that either of you want to add about this?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Scott. I actually just put a coupon code in the Zoom chat box there. It's Awakening World, just Awakening World, all lowercase, no spaces. And it's a coupon code for your first 3 months at 50% off if you sign up for the monthly.
Wow.
And the monthly subscription is $15 a month. And if you want to sign up for a year, you'll actually get 2 months for free at $149 for an annual. So if you want to go for the monthly and just try it out, there's a 50% off coupon code for your first 3 months. Just enter that at checkout. Make sure you select the monthly subscription model offering.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And I'd love to share just a little appreciation as well.
Please.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I just want to celebrate that, working with Steve and Dolphin has been such a pleasure. I feel so honored by them in the creation process. I can feel such their deep reverence and respect for the people that they're bringing in to the RelationFlix platform. The quality of the content for the price, it's kind of amazing. And what I love about just the energy of RelationFlix is there's so much open-mindedness. It's like what is going on in the worlds of relationship and sexuality right now is different than it was 2, 5, 10 years ago. And I just feel like regardless of where you are in the spectrum of sexuality and relating, there's going to be something that you will be able to connect with. So I celebrate this platform and I highly recommend checking it out.
And Ariel, what are some of the courses that you have, or classes, videos that you have on the platform?
Yeah, so I have a video specifically on women's pleasure, these different ways that we as women can actually expand our capacity to receive pleasure. And so much of it has to do with our own psychology. And also the somatics of the body. I also have some videos on there around desire. Gosh, Stephen, do you remember the other ones that I have on there? It's such.
Yep.
Okay, go.
Yeah, there's another one on healing, getting out of gender roles. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, everybody, definitely, please, please, please join RelationFlix. Well, I'm going to go to Sean Rhee with the next question that I've got for you. And Sean Rhee, going to kind of take it into your practice of sensual intelligence. What's a first step? So for those of us that are maybe more disconnected from our bodies, even touching ourselves, we don't really do that very often. What are some first steps to reawaken our relationship to our sensual intelligence?
Thank you for asking. And I loved how you were like, oh, and even the touching ourselves can be like, oh, I got squeegee or weird, or it's like, I'm not wanting that. The first thing, one thing that's very interesting, I just thought of it right now, is with the breath. With our breathing, we are literally always touching ourselves. And when we breathe in, that air, or we are being touched by the cool air going into the nose down the throat, into the chest and the belly. And so the very first thing that I would suggest is to take a moment to actually really feel your breathing as the gift that it is. Paying attention, cool, 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 cool. And then knowing that when your breath comes out, it is hot because that is your energy. It is your essence coming out into the world. And so just being in that mindfulness, in that presence, in that state of breathing in as a gift. It is actually, it is the breath, the air is touching my body, and that is keeping me alive. And exhaling, that is, me letting go of these things that I'm not, the breath that I really don't need. Next, when you feel your breath coming in, just actually feel into the expansion, to the expansiveness. Or, oh, this part feels good when I'm expanding. It feels kind of good to like, take a good breath. It feels good to let it out. Just be in the play and the curiosity with your breathing. Feel into, oh, I don't, my stomach is actually really tight and I don't want to breathe into that, and have that be okay. Like, I don't want to breathe into my stomach. Okay. And so more like bringing in curiosity, observation of just your own breathing, to recontextualize that as a way of playing with your own sensuality that you actually can't help but to be doing all the time anyway, because you're going to be breathing. But to just bring awareness to it and play in curiosity.
You could read the phone book and make it interesting, Sean. I tell you. You just have such a wonderful way. And Christine just wrote, "My breath is my best friend." So, listen, I think we all want more Sean Rhee, and here's the way to do it. And this is something really fun. So, everybody pay attention. Go to her website, shawnree.com, SHAWNREY.com, and take her sensuality IQ tape quiz. I've done it a couple times now, and it's really fun. So we'll take it all together. You'll learn a little bit about Scott. So I am returning. And then you go through and you answer these questions. I'll just do the first one, and then you get a sense of them. Even as a kid, you were lively and outspoken, or a pleasure seeker, or a playful sprite, or a smarty pants geek. Serious, smart, structured, psychic, magical, compassionate, and sensitive. And she has actually a bigger description. And you fill all of this out, and then pretty quickly you get a response of what your sensual intelligence type is. I was an empathic guy both times. So, Sean Rhee, thank you for putting that sensual IQ test together. Anything you want to share about some of the responses that you've gotten, or some of the ways that it's helped people to learn about themselves?
Yeah. So the whole point of it is not to be like, I am stuck in this type. It's more like, oh, these are some of the characteristics, some of the things that I can tend towards. And if I'm knowing that, then I can honor me. And then also for me, like, I'm always talking about wholeness. So bringing ourselves back to wholeness and all the different parts and all the different things that we are, all the different expressions. And so let's say you get like the empath, or let's say you get the diva. That's one of them. And the diva is like, so I've had some divas be like, oh my gosh, I feel uncomfortably seen. Because like I do have like more passion, more fire. And sometimes when that does come out, it does sometimes, push away, or sometimes I do like jump in really quickly. And then but what I'm really wanting is to be held, and to be, to be seen, to be held in my too muchness, or to be, to be played with in my, in my bigness, or also to like be in my softness. And so when people take the quiz, they're like, oh my goodness, yes, that. And what I do in the quiz is I point you to sections, sections in the book where you can play around with creating a more sense of wholeness, a more sense of wholeness in your expression. And so I'll go back, like for the diva, I'll be like, oh, here's like, that fire is beautiful. The fire that you are is wonderful. Think of your fire as a sempira. Sempira is a Ugandan word for a fire that's created for constructive purposes. And so if you feel into your fire, as that, and have a relationship with it so that you can dance with your fire rather than have to be like, doing all the things, then you get to really deepen into yourself. Another chapter I will like suggest for like the diva would be the chapter on peace. And that one is like, okay, how can you really use, how can you discover your fluidity, your softness, but in a way that is yummy for you. It's not to force. It's not to be like, okay, you must become all soft and fluid. It's like, no, you get to become your diva way of being soft and fluid, because that is your sensual intelligence interfacing with the intelligences of our other sensual expressions. So yeah, that's kind of what happens. It's like it's more to be a reference point rather than a diagnostic tool.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for just doing everything you do with so much love and so much joyfulness. And really, I think that you have a great career ahead of you because your wisdom and the way you express yourself is so alive and so juicy. I'm really grateful that we got to know you early on, as we're going to watch you become this best-selling author and Oprah's best friend, and God knows what you've got down the line. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, Ariel Brown, I'm coming to you because I'd love for people, of course, we're winding down. We're kind of in our final minutes here. What else would you like people to know about your practice? And I'll actually go to your website. Her website is her name, so it's very easy. Ariel Brown. And she spells her first name Arielle, arielbrown.com. And so I love this, the art of having what you want. So let's just start there. What are some tips for having what you want?
Beautiful. So when people enter into my work, whether it's as an individual or as a couple, the main place that we often start is the person's relationship to their own desire. And what I find is that many of us have a complex relationship to desire, and that can very much relate to sin and conditioning around religion. So in that 4-part video series, what we're starting to do is look at the underlying connections that exist between, for example, your relationship to desire and your relationship to your own personal power, or your relationship to desire and your relationship to your own personal boundaries, your relationship to desire and your relationship to trust of yourself, trust of life, and trust of other. And finally, the relationship between desire and fear. Because what tends to reveal itself is that when we tap into the true essence of what our soul desires, it often tends to be the thing that our ego and our personality most fears, because it requires us to become something entirely different than we've known ourselves to be. So I love working with people at that edge of what we most desire and what we most fear, to help ourselves become available to receiving what it is that we truly want in love and in life.
Beautiful. So what's an example of when somebody comes along and they get in touch with what they really, really long for, and you help them get in touch with what the fear or the block is to get in the way? Then what happens in your practice or your process?
Mm-hmm. So a lot of this is really about learning how to hold compassionate space for the self when fear or self-judgment arises. I was speaking earlier on about the relationship between contraction in the body versus expansiveness in the body. And what also often happens is that When there's something that we touch into that we deeply desire, then there's a fear or a judgment that arises about that desire. There's usually some shame or some story or some guilt that has us like literally clamped down in our nervous system. And even just inviting for those who are watching now to notice, like think about something that you desire, and then what you judge about that desire, and notice just what happens in the body. When we go into this state of self-judgment or shame or shutting down, we're actually, I look at it like it's a tin can, like we're crushing the tin can of our energetic nervous system. So a lot of the work that I do is help people create energetic space systems by bringing an immense amount of love and approval to just let the feelings move through. It's like permission to feel, permission to validate the feelings that we have been judging and suppressing and making wrong for so long. And what can transform in our life when we finally start validating who we are and what we want and what we truly need.
That's beautiful. You know, I have to admit, when just now when you asked, what came up for me was I thought of something that I really want. And I noticed my fear of not wanting to acknowledge how much I want it for fear that I'm not going to have it. So I just, in this little practice, noticed that came up for me.
Thank you.
Yeah. Lynn and Leif have asked a question, so I'm going to bring everybody back on. And an interesting question. They ask, can we speak about the effects of music with sexual spirituality? Wonderful question. I'd love for each of you to offer a thought. Shanri, I noticed you lit up, so I'm going to go to you first.
Oh yeah. Well, for me, being a dancer artist first, oh my goodness, using music music is a way of, it's like your magic carpet. It's your supporter. It's your muse. And yeah, I mean, music is, I mean, whether it's just like, whether it's bringing back memories, or it's like, there to help you to take you on an auditory journey with, with your body and with each other. I mean, music is beautiful. But another thing is the music of our own bodies. I know someone talked about voice. The music, I find, like, actually connecting with the music of your own body first, or okay, it doesn't have to be first. At some point, connect with the music of your own body. Don't just have the music be like, always be the thing, because being able to connect with your own moans and groans and sounds and growls and all these different things is very important, because that's you. That's the music that you are creating, or that you're creating with another person. And it's really important for us to, to have a relationship with that music as well. So yes, have go on this kaleidoscopic musical, and have it take you on these beautiful journeys. Then also don't forget the music of your own body.
Beautiful. Thank you. That was a great start. Stephen, you are an audiophile, so tell us, I'm eager to hear what you have to say.
Cool. Yeah, I got this. I view sexuality a lot like cooking, in the context of that they're both a couple of art forms that I really enjoy. And really, for me, it's about taking a blank canvas and filling that canvas with color and texture and movement and different flavors in a way where everything has this coherence together. And yeah, it's why certain flavors go astronomically well together and some just completely clash. And the same goes for the canvas of an empty bedroom with two people rushing into it. So yeah, I think, like, just to bottom line it, I like to weave the tantric principles of Shiva and Shakti, and the belief system in tantric philosophy is that Shiva is the empty space of the cosmos, and Shakti, the divine feminine, is the expression of life and color and light throughout that empty space. And so, yeah, it's like the empty canvas and empty space are analogous. And it's like, so what textures do we want to deliberately and skillfully bring into the space. What flavors do we want to bring into the space in order to create a certain artistic experience for people to enjoy and appreciate? So that's kind of like the philosophical approach to it. And yeah, it's really a matter of like, what do I want to fill the space with or not?
Beautiful. One of our viewers, Anna Ohm, writes, cosmic cookery. So that's what you're doing. Ariel, any thoughts about music and sacred sexuality?
Yeah. One of my favorite intersections is the intersection of sound and sexuality. In many ways, I resonate with a lot of what Sean Ray was. So I'll bring in another flavor. The other aspect of my work that I love is I work with 432 hertz crystal singing bowls. And for those of you who don't know, there was a period of time where the normal hertz was in, what they use in orchestras and modern music shifted from 432 hertz to 440 hertz. So it's been really interesting kind of dropping more deeply into I like experiencing 432 hertz crystal singing bowls as divine frequency, and the relationship between sound as an energetic current that we can align more with the divine, and also our sexuality as an energetic current that we can align more in connection with the divine. So what I would say is, to me, it's this invitation when we're engaging in our sexuality. If every act of sex has the opportunity to connect us more with the divine, how do we choose partners that everything in us feels so deeply safe and able to open with, so we can more easily tap into that divine current? I'm complete.
Was speaking and I didn't realize I was muted. One of the things that you just said that reminds me is that discernment is so important. And Yogananda spoke of how discernment is one of the last lessons of master souls. I'm going to bring all of our friends on and just a few final announcements. And I just want to remind everybody where to go. So, of course, for RelationFlix, go to the website, RelationFlix. And if you haven't already either gotten the incredible offer he's giving with the Awakening World coupon code, or at least get your 14-day free trial. And Stephen, I love working with you, and thank you so much. It's been really, really, really fun. A reminder again to go to Ariel Brown's website, and it's her name, Ariel Brown, Arielle, Brown.com. My mother's name was Ariel, by the way. And then, of course, take the quiz. Take the quiz from Sean Rhee. It's so much fun. And again, that's at SeanRhee.com. It's her name, Sean Rhee, just her first name, and take that quiz, ShawnRey.com. I also want to let people know about a couple of other things. Next week, we've got a really fun show. I'm going to be collaborating with Alan Steinfeld again, and our theme is science and quantum consciousness. We touched on that a little bit today. And we've got some amazing people, JJ and Desiree Hertok. He wrote The Keys of Enoch, which is like one of the most amazing, it's almost like the Bible of New Age awakening. Caroline Corey is going to join us. She is an incredible filmmaker who is tracking people's superpowers and how people's superpowers are taking place. And just a really wide variety of remarkable people. So that's going to be next Friday night, Saturday night. And then for the Sacred Sunday show, we're taking that theme a little bit further into how we can use quantum healing and transformation in our lives. So we're going to actually get into some specifics of how we can heal ourselves through quantum healing. So that's going to be next weekend. And then the very last thing I want to announce, and I mentioned this last night, for the first time in 2 years, I am teaching a course. And this is it's really my masterwork. It's where I take everything that I've learned working with directly with Marshall Rosenberg and Tony Robbins and all the dozens of remarkable coaches and teachers I've had the opportunity to work with when I did all my television shows for 15 years. And I've condensed it into a 12-week course. And some of my favorite love coaches will be joining me. And so we're starting soon. It's going to start on Saturday morning, April 23rd. But for people who register early, we have a bonus class on April 16th. Every Saturday morning for 2 hours. And then after the class, there's an optional after class where people, if they want to, can stay and talk about what came up. There's also an optional empathy practice group on Wednesday nights. There's also an optional Facebook group. Now, what I've learned, because I've been teaching this for a long time, is that about half the people come because they really want to learn these tools in a community way. They want to be in community learning and practicing. Other people are taking the course because they want to be a love coach, or they already are a relationship coach, and they want to add these tools to their tool belt. I am not proprietary. The tools that I teach, you can take them, make them your own, run with them. And this is for everybody, and it's for all relationships, not just romantic. We have singles, we have couples, we have people there because they really want to work on their family stuff. I recently was hired to work with two sisters, and the one sister, this was her goodbye call. It's like, I want to permanently end my relationship with my sister because it's so painful. And so I want you to mediate. This is going to be my farewell call. So that's what the intention was at the beginning. Well, of course, what I've learned is that we can focus on all the problems, but this is love coaching. And in love coaching, we start with the love. And so I asked them, I was a little sneaky in starting, okay, since this is our farewell, let's at least remember some of the good times and some of the ways that you felt really well loved or supported by the other. And we just started with that. Well, to make a long story short, one session led to 6 sessions, and they are back together. I've recently worked with couples that were getting divorced, and one couple in particular, they just bought a house together, and they're back together. That doesn't always happen, but I'm telling these stories because in love coaching, we don't focus on the diagnostic evaluation of what's wrong with somebody. We help remember how wonderful everybody is. And we don't focus on what the other person did that was so bad or terrible. We address it only after we've remembered the love that we're missing. And believe me, any of you that have emotional pain about a family member or an ex, that emotional pain is in direct proportion to the love that you're missing, the love you once shared that you're missing. And so in love coaching, we take it from that approach. Nobody's broken. Nobody is permanently fucked up. We all are divinity experiencing itself in a human body. And we don't even need to heal. We just need to remember who we truly are. And that's what love coaching is all about. Remembering who we are as individuals and remembering who we are in the relationships that are precious to us, where there have been differences and we didn't have the tools to properly manage those differences. So if you're interested in the course, I do offer a free 15-minute phone or Zoom consultation. Send me a private message on Facebook, or if you go to lcamasterclass.com, you'll get all the details and you'll see where you can register for that consultation. Thank you, Stephen and Sean Rhee and Ariel. What a beautiful morning. What a wonderful opportunity to just marinate in all your wisdom. I'm going to go to gallery view. So this is a chance. Don't be shy. Turn on your cameras. I sure appreciate Phyllis and Jordan and Eleanor and Anna and Olivier and those of you who have your cameras on, Mannion. Thank you for joining us and have a beautiful, beautiful day. One last thought, a reminder that we can make any moment sacred just by choosing to see the divinity. And Ariel and Stephen and Sean Rhee have given us some wonderful tools of how to do that today.